You're listening to the Iterators of the Imperium.
Hi, I'm MEZ, and I'm here with my lovely co-host, Ryan, and you're listening to Season Quickie of the Iterators of the Imperium podcast, the podcast in which Ryan is the expert on Warhammer 40K, and I am the noob, or intermediate, trying to learn about the Warhammer universe. So yeah, we are talking about Orks in this season, and we are currently talking about the Rynn world, and Ryan will just recap what happened in the last episode, and then we move on to, well, more current information.
Yes. We're going to keep making our way forward gradually. You know, it's what we do here.
Yes.
I want to mention something just before we get into it. So there's a guy I work with that listens to the podcast, right? And I'm pretty sure he just puts it on to annoy his girlfriend, or his wife, or whatever, right? I think he just puts it on to annoy her, which is fair. Perfectly reasonable, right? But the other day, I've got into work, and he comes to me and he goes, "Here, Bill, I checked out your podcast again the other day. I've not listened for a bit, so I thought I'll stick on your newest episode." He goes, "MEZ is getting a bit ahead of yourself, as you know. An intermediate. He's been at this for 5 minutes." So I just thought that was quite funny. I thought you'd like to know.
Oh, gee, thanks. Appreciate
I know, right?
it.
I know, getting mad digs.
I'm the noob trying to learn about the Warhammer universe. That's fine. I've been degraded, Ryan. I'm going to say that for the future. You can thank the guy for at work.
I'll let him know that you're deeply upset by this.
That's fine. I know I'm a noob at Warhammer still. I thought I'd learn a little bit, being an intermediate.
You got the basics. We're getting there, though, bit by bit.
Yeah.
So, last time, we obviously started off Rynn's world properly. Got through the whole space battle and everything. The Orks getting onto the planet and gradually ravaging everything. The Crimson Fist's fortress being blown up by their own missile. And the little squad of stragglers that are now making their way down towards New Rynn City. There is one thing that I didn't mention last time, which is that during the space battle, one of the Imperial ships fled into the warp. It made like an emergency warp jump to escape, because it was like the last ship left. So there is a very slight chance that there are reinforcements coming.
Okay.
Very slight, because the ship may have gotten away and warned someone. It's unlikely, but I'm just throwing it out there. I should have mentioned this, and I'd forgotten to.
It might happen, might not.
Yeah, I mean, and I suppose the last thing that we mentioned last time was the captain that was running the defenses at New Rynn City kind of died in a heroic last stand as they lost like one of the outer sections of the city. So now the librarian's leader is in charge of the defenses there. So, as it stands, right, it's basically just New Rynn City we're thinking about. It's the only place that has anyone actually fighting and any humans left to protect. And the planet, the city does have a big shield over it, right? A big, like, energy shield thing over it. So bombardment isn't gonna do much, right? So it has to be like a frontal assault, where, like, troops just walk in and try and kill the humans, right?
Yeah.
The center of the city has an energy shield. They have, like, a citadel in the center, which is where all the nobles and stuff are. That bit has a shield. So they can take outer sections with bombardment and crashing planes into the walls and stuff, but to get to the middle of it, you kind of have to, like, destroy the shield or just walk troops in the front door, which is a challenge.
Yeah.
So, really, the only way for the Orks to get further into New Rynn City at the moment, the only viable option, is an underpass, right? Because as you'll see, there is a river that cuts right through the middle of the city. There is, like, a tunnel, underpass, that goes under the river. And this is in no way really protected, is the thing.
Okay.
Yeah. So, the thing is, the Orks don't know it's there, right? They're not exactly tactical masters. They've not analysed blueprints or architectural designs of the city, so they don't know for a fact that it's there. So the only ones that really venture in are just like random squads of orcs that have been hunting around and just happen to walk that way. So once in a while, like 5 or 6 or something will wander in there and get gunned down by the Imperial defenders. But that's it. So that is the easiest route to get further into the city. And it is the one the orcs end up taking. Unfortunately, there is a squad of Crimson Fists guarding this underpass, this big tunnel. So it's just one squad of them, right? It's like 15, 20 guys max guarding this bit. But they had like prepared like ragtag barricades of any random crap they had nearby, like tearing down road signs and stuff, doors off of cars and things. Just anything they could use to build a barricade to give them something to like protect them while they gun down any orcs that come in. They also managed to assemble a jerry-rigged minefield at the start of the tunnel as well, which cut down the orc numbers quite heavily. Because at some point, because these little squads of orcs kept going in here and not coming back, eventually the orcs did get they kind of got word that this was a way in, so they start sending troops like en masse kind of thing. So you end up like a horde of orcs piling into this tunnel. Bunch of them are blown to pieces by the minefield. A bunch of them are gunned down by the Space Marines behind their barricades. But there's that many orcs. They are just pushing forward and killing some of the Space Marines and making their way in.
But as well, Ryan, when they get blown up, by the way, because they're basically mushroom spores, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't that just like lay the foundation for them to come up again later? In like, you cut the head of one and then 2 will spawn, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I guess the thing that you're getting at is that forever this tunnel will be a breeding zone for orcs. That is a fact, because all they've done is paste orc juice over the roof and walls.
Right. Don't say it like that.
I don't know a better way to say it.
Orc juice. Sorry, I can't. Orc juice in the spawn tunnel.
Yeah,
Doesn't that sound like disgusting?
Yeah. It's perfectly accurate. Trust me. I read the book. Trust me.
Oh.
So, the Space Marines managed to keep the orcs at bay to some degree, obviously taking some damage and some losses. Their defense is gradually getting whittled down. Until this huge orc war boss turns up. Huge dude, big ass horns. I don't know why he's got horns, but this one has horns. And he just stumbles upon this route and leads his whole fucking, horde of hulking orcs into this tunnel. So it's went from, groups of little straggler orcs that have happened to wander in to this giant war boss leading a whole fucking regiment of orcs that are the big fuckers that have won some serious fights in the past into this bit. This is a serious threat. And it also came with scavenged tanks. So the orcs have obviously destroyed that much stuff that they've been finding the tanks that they've killed the crews of and stuff. And this orc war boss happened to be leading a horde of orcs that also contained a bunch of Imperial tanks that the orcs had taken control of. So the Space Marines now have this horde of giant orcs led by this war boss and a bunch of their own tanks coming at them.
Right.
Yeah. So they start getting pulped pretty quickly.
Could imagine.
Yeah. So obviously everyone charges into a big battle at the entrance to this tunnel, and things kind of shifted quite fast because the orcs looked like they had a fair chance of winning this one until they started getting shot in the ass. And this squad of 16 random Space Marines comes in from behind them, which isn't a lot of Space Marines, but you've basically got the same amount on both sides now, and you weren't really prepared for getting shot in the ass.
Yeah.
Yeah. And among all of this, you've got one guy, one Space Marine in this big fancy gilded armor dancing through the horde of orcs with a power sword, just gutting them apart and all this stuff, like a fucking ballerina of death. That's going to be the name of this episode. I'm just.
That's actually not a bad title, you know.
Yeah.
That's not a bad title.
Pedro Cantor, the ballerina of death. for the record, his actual title is Lord Hellblade, so it's not far off.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a good title, though.
It is also a good title. Can we fit both of them in the title?
I'll see what I can do. A
nice,
very
nice,
long
nice.
title.
That's fine.
Yeah. So the Marines start like getting in among the Orks, and they're getting them from both sides. So the numbers start to dwindle, right? And the Marines are holding their own a bit until the Orc war boss just grabs one of the Space Marines by the leg and just like lifts him off the ground and then cuts him in half with his power claw. And when he like finishes cutting a Space Marine clean in half with a big claw, he finds one of. So you know how I said there was like the squad up in the mountains that survived the base being detonated. Yeah. So this is the other 16 Marines that have just came in out of nowhere and flanked the Orc horde here. The other Marines that were already guarding the tunnel were waiting for them to guide them inside. So in this new group that's appeared, you've got Pedro Cantor dancing through them like a fucking ballerina of death, and you also have his like second in command here, which is a guy called Alessio Cortez, who this entire time has not wanted to follow any strategy other than run at Orc and punch till dead. So when he sees one of the Space Marines get cut in half by this war boss, Cortez just goes nuts, charges him down and guts him.
Lovely.
Yeah. It's a big battle. There's like it's the war boss with his big ass chain axe and his claw, Cortez with his sword. The two of them have this big fancy battle. I've actually written out notes for this as like a blow by blow, so it could be really cool. And I'm realizing there's no point in it because to go into that level of detail would make this more of me just telling you the fucking book than it would be me telling you what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I wanted to sit and read you the book, that would be a totally separate thing. We can do that at some point if you want. We'll get like sit with a nice book. We'll get like a fireplace in the background. It'll be delightful. That's not what we're doing today.
We could do that at a live stream at some point. If anybody listening, watching right now, leave a comment, and we'll do that. I'll make a new studio with like a fireplace and Ryan in a chair and me sitting like.
I'll get an actual rocking chair for it. It'll be great.
Oh my god! I'll actually sit on a carpet with a camera in front of me for an hour or two. Like, let's get that going.
My feet and I'll read you a tale.
That sounds kind of lit, you know.
We'd have to do it with Space Wolves ones. Those guys are all about like sitting by the campfire and telling stories to the young'uns.
Oh my god! I'll give like a fluffy pillow and everything.
It'll be great.
This is fine.
I'll borrow my dad's big ass wolf dog. It'll be cool.
Anybody leaves a comment, like just anybody, and we'll do that. I don't care.
That actually sounds like a weirdly good idea. Just saying. Anyway, the gist of this fight between the war boss and Alessio Cortez is big fancy melee, like like blade on blade kind of battle, which ends with the war boss trying to like shove like Alessio away from him, and then Cortez just like turns his weight so the war boss falls, and then he gets on top of him and punches through his back and rips out his spine.
Damn.
Yeah, Cortez does not fuck around. There's a whole thing of like it's Cortez the Invincible or the Immortal. He cannot die. He's been in million situations where he should have died and he's never died. So there's this like myth about this one Space Marine being immortal.
I feel like that's a lot of people who has that.
Yeah, it's called plot armor.
I mean, really, yeah. The hero never dies.
Yeah, it should really just be like Alessio Cortez, the main character. He's not even the main character, he's like a secondary character in this. Anyway, that also pulls out our war boss's spine, so the Orc horde obviously loses morale and quickly gets routed by the Space Marines. Typical stuff.
Yes.
So, Chapter Master Cantor and his little group of ragtag weirdos are led back into the city. As they go through, they realise they're going to be followed in, and it turns out that the Marines that were there guarding it have laid trip mines all over the tunnel. So as soon as an Orc follows them in, the tunnel will detonate and drop the river in. Just sealing it permanently and killing any Orcs that are inside. And
Nice.
it's like just as the Imperials get out the other side of the tunnel, they hear it detonate. They're like, "Shit, run!" The water like splashes out behind them as the tunnel just infills. It's like fuck, 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 fuck.
Shit.
Now, again, we're on the orc side here, so this is a bad thing for us because not only did a bunch of orcs die, the Crimson Fists now have their greatest leader, Chapter Master Pedro Cantor, leading them again. Even though their numbers are really heavily, decimated, for lack of a better word, they now have a proper leader again, which is bad for us because it means they'll be better at defending.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, in the time that kind of followed this, a few brave men gave their lives to try and do their part to, like, stem the orc progress, right? So, like, you had a bunch of the Rynn's Guard soldiers, so just normal guardsmen from this planet. A squad of them that were, like, they basically fought their way out into the orcs, held position, and called down an airstrike on their own heads, because otherwise the orcs would move on and not get hit by it. Like, they knew they were gonna die, so they just held their position and got bombed to shit. There was also another thing of, like, suicidal night raids going on, where, like, a bunch of the Rynn's Guard would, like, charge out at nighttime and gut as many orcs as they could before being murdered, knowing that they would die, but, like, the orcs don't do much at nighttime. They're quite, inactive at night, so it was the best time to try and make, like, a suicidal assault on them.
Yeah.
So there was a bunch of stuff like this went on to try and, like, stem the orc progress a bit, which didn't do much, to be fair. And with Cantor now in charge, the Marines were incredibly efficient at what they did. Every time that Snagrod tried to, like, breach the walls, they were gunned down while, like, still setting charges on the walls.
Yeah.
Every time they tried to push to a gate with, like, armored vehicles to, like, blow it down, they were destroyed by Devastator squads, right? Like, Cantor just had everything running to a T, right? Every time you needed a specific type of defense, they were there waiting for the fucking orcs. Things like that.
So, 2 steps ahead in the game of chess, essentially.
Essentially, yes. The thing is, Crimson Fists are very good at defensive siege warfare. They're very good at surviving being sieged. So, Cantor was just like, "We got this, dudes. Don't worry." The siege kind of goes on for a while, right? Time starts to pass, and then summer comes. And Rynn's world is known for its, like, harsh extremes of the seasons. So in summer, it is, like, devastating heat. And it's, like, so much heat that it's even starting to take a toll on the Space Marines, which are kind of impervious to everything. So, like, you can imagine how fucked up the normal people are. So you start getting loads of people that are, like, put into infirmaries with, like, heat stroke and exhaustion and stuff like that.
Damn.
Yeah. But orcs are not affected by the heat. So they were not bothered a shit. So the Imperials were quite visibly losing this fight, because not only were the orcs constantly sieging them and, whittling away their numbers slowly but surely, and the humans were struggling with food by this point, you also now had the heat taking them out of the game as well. So it was like a 3-pronged attack, only one of which the orcs had to do anything about. By the time it got to, like, late autumn, the orcs had just started building on this planet. They started building, like, big-ass ziggurats and, like, manufactories to make new tanks and guns and stuff. They were like, "We're just moving in, guys. This is our planet now. We're going to use your planet's natural resources to kill you."
Oh, that sounds horrendous. But you know what? Actually, with the orcs, that sounds amazing.
Right? It's like tactical genius. Not even using up your own materials.
I'm gonna use your shit to get you down, Yeah. I like that.
So the Imperials had to, like, watch from the walls in Urin City's, like, central citadel as, like, their planet was gradually burned to the ground by the orcs, and in its place rose up all these, like, orc factories and stuff. And by the time it got to winter, they finally clocked what the orcs were building in the distance. They were building Gargants, orc war mechs. They're like the orc titans.
Yeah.
They were just building a bunch of them outside the walls to come and knock down the shields.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah. So these fuckers spent like another year watching their doom being built.
Damn.
Yeah, they had, like, the Imperials had no choice but to just sit and watch as these war machines were just, like, gradually being built outside.
And that's the shoulder, that's the neck, that's the head.
Oh, that's the
and
gun
we're
that's
done.
probably going to kill me.
Yeah, and we're done.
Yeah. By the time we got to, like, the dead of winter, the Imperials had, like, the same problem as they did in the summer, where the cold was starting to take lives in great numbers, rather than the heat.
Yeah.
It also made the food situation even worse, because you can't really grow anything in winter, and yeah. You also need more food in winter because of the cold. By the time it came to spring and the snow was gone, the orcs had ramped up momentum to get the Gargants finished, right? They were almost done. This was 18 months that they had been sieging New Rynn City, and it was about to come to an end when these Gargants were finished. I think they had something like a week or 10 days or something till the Gargants would realistically be done, as best guess from the Imperials. And the last standing fortress of defiance to all of the orcs was the Silver Citadel, right in the center of the city with its shield. That was all that was standing against this massive orc army with its newly built scrap tanks and its Gargants and everything. And you gotta remember, there was still like 1,000 orc ships, or thousands of orc ships, in orbit over the planet as well.
Yeah.
Because like the whole fleet of warships were still over the planet. And one day, randomly, about this point, they hear the sound, like the stomping, and they look out, and the Gargants are finally moving towards them. The Imperials are fucked, is basically what was going down there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But around the same time as the Gargants finally started to like get put into use to head towards the walls, Snagrod and his boys start to get some messages that shit's going down in orbit. Because what's just happened is a nearly 2,000 ship fleet of Imperial ships have just arrived in system and engaged the Orc fleet.
Okay.
So suddenly there is like all out like naval warfare going on in space above this planet. But the Orc ships are heavily outnumbered.
Oh shit, that's not good.
Some
for
of the
us.
ships are... It's not only Imperial Navy ships, it's also chapter ships from other Adeptus Astartes chapters. So these are like Space Marine warships among the Navy ships as well. So even the giant ships that Snagrod had are not necessarily a guaranteed winner of this, because Space Marine warships tend to be pretty fucking good at taking out bigger ships. There also aren't many ships bigger than them, to be fair. But they tend to be like the most heavily armed ships you'll ever see. So, Snagrod's fleet immediately begins to move to intercept this Imperial fleet, and war breaks out in orbit. And the Orc horde was just following behind the Gargants, slowly moving towards the city. They could just, like, the Imperials could just see their doom coming towards them as this, like, green tide. So there's a sudden burst of activity that kind of goes on, and every single last living member of the Crimson Fist bursts from underground networks, right, into the spaceport outside the city. So this is like, it's all been the exact same thing as far as Snagrod is concerned for the last God knows how long, of them pummeling the walls of this town trying to get in, right, and being pushed back by guardsmen and space marines. But out of nowhere, over at the spaceport, which is outside the city, or it's within the area the Orcs control, right? They took it a while ago. Out of nowhere, these fuckers just burst up out of the sewers and start destroying all the orcs in sight.
Huh.
So, obviously, the orcs are like, where the fuck did you idiots come from? But, being that they've been surprised by a few hundred space marines flying out of the sewers into a spaceport, they're kind of put on the back foot and get wiped out pretty quick. Because you gotta remember, the orcs thought that they controlled this building months and months and months ago. Like, a year ago they took this place. They're not worried about it now, right? This isn't where they're gonna... Nah, these fuckers went through the sewers to get to this one building.
Damn.
So, pretty quickly, an all-out bloody battle occurs all across this spaceport, where space marines on orcs just decimating each other to try and take control of this building, right? Because what's happened is the space marines have gotten word that the reinforcements have arrived, but there's kind of 2 or 3 issues, right? One is they have nowhere to land, like any reinforcements. 2 is they don't have a way to communicate properly between the forces on the planet and the fleet, so they can't coordinate what they're doing. And 3 is the orcs control the planet's orbital defenses, so big-ass guns on the planet that can shoot into space. So, not a great time to try and actually send down reinforcements. So, Pedro Cantor has organized all of his living space marines to sneak through these underground tunnels to the spaceport to try and take the building, because if they do, they get control of the radio, the air defenses, and they'll have landing platforms. So it becomes if we take this one building back, we can win this war. And these space marines are the only ones that have any chance of doing it, basically. So all of the space marines get sent in, every last one of them.
Whew.
So the spaceport is made up of, like, landing platforms and then a bunch of towers that all, like, I don't know, they all control different systems and things. And there's various landing platforms at different heights of these towers.
Yeah.
The central tower is where the control rooms for the radio and the air defenses will be. But it also will be the most heavily defended building there. So the Space Marines kind of split into 2 teams, right? One to, like, you know, scour the area and gradually work their way through. One to act as, like, a assault squad to go for the objective. So, a team led by Pedro Cantor, Alessio Cortez, those 2 lead a team up one of the towers. Not the main one of the other ones, right? Because it'll be less defended. This is the idea.
Yeah.
And they fight their way up this tower, and the idea is they're going to use one of the bridges at the top of the tower to get to the central one and skip, like, you know, the vast majority of its defenses by, you know, skipping a bunch of floors. That's the idea. So, they murder their way up this tower, and right before they get to the top, right before they get to, like, the stairs, or as they're getting to the stairs that lead to the top, they hear this, like, I don't know, they hear this, like, I guess, like, noise in motors, and then, like, rattling of, like, bullet casings falling. And they come into some pretty serious resistance at this point, because a bunch of their Space Marines run up ahead of them and then basically just get peppered to death and just fall back down the stairs. And Cantor and Alessio kind of, like, move up slowly, and they finally see what the fuck's going on. There is just this one giant orc in power armor with a fucking, like, multi-barreled Gatling cannon on his arm, just staring at them. And the thing is, they recognize this guy, right? This orc is the war boss, Urzog Mag Kol. And do you remember this whole thing started with a bunch of Space Marines getting sent to Bad Landing to see what was going on, and because of one of the snipers being an idiot, they all got killed.
Yeah.
This orc is the one that killed Captain Alves, the one that led the attack on Bad Landing. So these guys recognize the face of this fucker.
It all came full circle, huh?
That's it. They're like, we're like, so Cortez, who obviously has been wanting to just go head first assault this entire time, fuck your strategy, is like, nah, I'm taking this fucker, one-on-one combat, have at me, bitch. So Cantor and, like, the other Marines are like, Alright, fuck it, yeah, I'm not gonna stop you, let's go. So they all bail past and make a run for it to, like, head towards Central Tower, and Cortez is left to fight this fucker on his own, one-on-one.
Mano a mano.
That's it.
Yeah.
So, the other Marines that, like, had ran past with Cantor and whatnot, they make their way across to the Central Tower. They have to kill a bunch of Orks to get there. Obviously, once they get there, there is more issues within the tower, right? It's a lot of tight hallways, and they find themselves ambushed from both sides. Just a bunch of Orks pile out in both, like, rooms on both sides. And a bunch of the Marines are murdered. Mainly because they don't have the room to move properly, right? That number of Orks wouldn't have stood much of a chance against that number of Marines normally. But in the tight space, they were at a disadvantage. And Orks are best at melee combat, so... You know, the Orks were doing their best, unfortunately, for the Space Marines. So by the time that's all done, there's only 9 Space Marines left, including Cantor.
Yeah.
And 2 of them are Tech Marines as well, that are there to, like, work the radio and the air defense systems. So, like, those 2 are, like, critically important. If they die, we're fucked, because none of the rest of us know how to work a radio. So it's like, everyone has just been circling around them to protect them while they fight. So, the Marines eventually make their way to, like, the radio control room. And they kill off the handful of, like, grots and stuff that are running around in there. Quickly take control of the radios, and Cantor is finally able to connect to the radio system and talk to the fleet in orbit. While they're fucking around with the radio, they accidentally get onto a broadcast, which is just, it's just Snagrod still just, like, taunting the humans. He's still doing the broadcast, like, I'm gonna fuck you guys up. I'm taking your planet, and fuck yourselves, and fuck your blue and red defenders. But eventually they get to the right broadcast, and Cantor is able to talk to one of the fleet commanders in orbit. And they manage to coordinate a bit. But obviously, they need to get the air defenses down next. So Cantor takes a couple of his guys, and they head back to the elevator to lead them further up into the tower to get to the air defense control room. Further down in the tower to get to the air defense control room. And as soon as they get off the elevator, Cantor just finds himself, like, totally thrown sideways, like, what the fuck just happened? Right? He gets, like, battered to the side and slides across the ground. And when he finally, like, you know, gets his head together and figures out where he is, gets his balance back, he looks down, and in his lap is the power fist of Alessio Cortez with the arm still in it. And he looks up, and standing over him is the beaten and bleeding form of Urzog Magkal. So, like, Alessio fucking died, but, like, he did some serious damage to this fucker before he died.
He made sure.
Yeah. He sold his life dearly. So, naturally, the 2 of them lunge towards each other and start brawling. And, again, not gonna do the big, you know, like, blow by blow of the fight. But, after getting, like, battered backwards by Urzog, Cantor, like, kind of gets to his feet again. The 2 of them go at each other again, and then from behind them, you just hear a voice go, "We are not finished, Xenos!" And then some fucker jumps on his back like a monkey, holding on with his legs wrapped around his waist, rams something in his mouth. Urzog, being a big dumbass orc, swallows it, just being a moron. The fucker jumps off his back and, like, rolls across the ground, and then the grenade goes off inside Urzog's belly. Just detonates him from the inside. It's just Alessio Cortez lying there on the ground with one arm, like, fucker. Almost had me.
Got me worried for a second.
Yeah, the immortal Alessio fucking Cortez. It turns out even losing an arm doesn't kill this fucker.
Nah. Takes more.
Yeah. So Cortez had not died as Cantor had assumed, which is good. He is pretty fucked up, being that he's, you know, missing an arm and, like, beaten to death and bleeding. But He's still alive. There's quite a funny moment after this when they like regroup with like their last like 4 Marines and the 2 leaders here, where they're like trying to discuss what the next plan of action is, and it's obviously head and take over the other control center to turn the planetary defenses back onto the loyal side. And there is a funny moment where like Cantor is telling Alessio he's not allowed to come with them because he's like half beaten to death and he's lost an arm. And Alessio's response is, "I didn't lose an arm, it's right there."
What do you mean?
Yeah, what do you mean? It was like in your lap 2 seconds ago. I know exactly where it is. It's fine.
Yeah.
Either way, they head in, they take over the air defense control room, killing off, again, a small group of Orks and Gretchens that are fucking around in there. And once they have the room under control, they heard the sound of, like, a fighter jet right outside the window. Like, they hear the jets of it going, and they're like, what the fuck? And all the Marines, like, hit the deck, and Cantor has just enough time to activate his Iron Halo. Do you know what an Iron Halo is?
No.
So, it's like an energy shield for one individual person. Like a personal force field, right? So he has just enough time to activate this before a hail of bullets burn through the windows of this control center. So he is perfectly fine, but he just stands there staring at this thing after he, like, drops the shield, and the Orks inside are like, oh shit, he's still alive. And the plane, like, turns sideways, and because he's expecting it to, like, fire again now that his shield's down. But nah, it just rotates slightly, and standing in, like, the bay of it, there's this gigantic Ork with red eyes, and the two of them just look at each other, and Cantor's like, shit, that's Snagrod. Like, that is the biggest fucking Ork I've ever seen in my life. 100%, that's fucking Snagrod himself. Snagrod just points down at one of, like, the landing platforms below them. And Cantor's like, yup, I'll meet you down there, let's do this. So he leaves the tech brains and that to, like, you know, get the systems working and everything. And he wanders down to the landing platform, gets there, no sign of Snagrod or the gunship until it, like, strafes overhead and shoots at him. And eventually it just it comes nearby and Snagrod just leaps out. Naturally the two of them get into a big bloody battle. The lander ship thing lands a wee bit off to the side to, I don't know, wait to pick up Snagrod after he's done murdering this fucker. But the two of them run at each other. Actually, no, it begins with a gunfire. The two of them empty both of their guns at each other and realize both of them have, like, personal shields. So they just fire until they both run out of ammo, having not harmed each other in any way, shape, or form. Dump their guns and run at each other. Cantor obviously cannot harm this fucker because he's still shielded. Now, I'm not going to do a blow-by-blow again. Eventually, Cantor gets behind him and spots the power supply for his shield, so he stabs it, blows it up, harming Snagrod in the process, and then proceeds to do, like, a death by 1,000 cuts style, like, 1,000 tiny, like a hit here, a cut there, a stab there, over and over again, while they, like, pummel into each other, gradually, like, whittling away at Snagrod. As, like, a final attack, Cantor tries to, like, bring his sword down on Snagrod's head while he's got him knocked on the ground. And Snagrod manages to catch the sword and, like, knock it from his hand. So Cantor just goes nuts and starts pummeling him with his fists. And after a little while of Snagrod getting punched in the face like the Hulk, just like, go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep. After a while of Snagrod getting punched in the face like that, he just, like, bucks his hips and launches Cantor off of him, and then gets up and runs back towards his ship. Cantor tries to chase him, but the ship obviously fires its guns at him to, like, suppress him so he can't do anything. Snagrod gets in, and the ship fucks off with him inside. Snagrod's hanging out the side of it, laughing at Cantor as he escapes. So, Snagrod survives. Unfortunately, Snagrod survives. But the Imperials now have everything they need to bring in proper reinforcements and to like evict the Orks from the planet. So with the spaceport now under Imperial control, the defenses go active. The guns on the planet start firing at the Ork ships in orbit, which means that the space battle is over much faster. And then pretty soon you've got armored vehicles, troops, space marines all landed on the planet and marching to war against the Orks. And you've even got like fighter jets and bombers flying overhead, taking out tons of the Orks as well. And you want to know what the first reinforcements that landed on the planet were, actually? There's a good one for you. What? The first reinforcements that landed on the planet were Titans, because they knew about the Gargants, and they needed to be destroyed before they took down the city's shields and killed the last, 100 humans left alive on the planet. So the first reinforcements they landed were warlord Titans that marched in and destroyed the Gargants.
That's quite smart, though, you know?
It's a good move, yeah.
That's a good move.
Yeah. And, with those reinforcements arrived, pretty quickly, Snagrod was evicted from Rynn's world. There is no confirmation that Snagrod himself at any point was killed during this. So at the moment, he is believed to still be alive and, orking it up somewhere.
I believe so.
What do you think about Rynn's world?
That's a lot to take in.
It is a lot to take in.
It is a lot to take in.
I want you to know, I did not like the book.
You did not like the book?
I did not. It had some good moments. It really did have some good moments. But a lot of it was weirdly paced. The thing is, it's part of a series. I believe it's Space Marine Battles, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's basically just Space Marines fighting. So it doesn't have, the character development or, the background kind of, secondary and tertiary storylines that I tend to like. To be fair, it might be because it's an individual novel. They can't do that much with it. You know what I mean? They have to kind of stick to what's going on here. They can't really do much in the way of, background storytelling or anything. So I do tend to like the longer series of novels more, because they can, advance characters a lot more and develop a lot more stuff. It tends to be a lot more kind of worthwhile payoff to storylines. So I'm not saying it's a bad book. I'm saying it isn't really to my taste. I want to make that clear. Yeah. As far as Space Marine books go, it's an alright book, right? I've read a few that are just Space Marines murdering shit, and you're like, yeah, okay, yeah. As far as those go, it's pretty good. Doesn't quite compare to the Space Wolves ones. Space Wolves, their books are pretty good, just saying. But, not my favourite. Not for me. I'll be honest with you, man. I'm 11 books into the Gaunt's Ghost series right now, and I'm just loving every minute of it. Just all the character development is amazing.
Yeah.
I think maybe I need to take a break after that series and do a bunch of one-off books, as a palate cleanser, Maybe I'm too invested in these long series at the moment.
Perhaps.
Maybe I've tainted my tastes.
Yeah.
Anyway, so interestingly, we actually don't have much more to do with the Orks.
Not as of now, no.
We've got one more major event coming up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which we'll probably be doing the introductory stuff for it at the end, towards the end of the next episode. So we're getting to it pretty quick. So be excited. Yeah.
Yes.
We're gonna have to figure out who we're gonna be looking at next soon. Ooh.
I'll find something.
Oh, I'm sure you will.
I'll find something.
Right, would you like to round off for today?
Sure can do. Well, thank you guys for listening to this episode of Iterators of the Imperium podcast, season Quinky. And if anybody doesn't know what Quinky is right now, if God,
it's how you say kinky in a weird language.
No. Quinky means 5, alright?
Yeah.
If anybody doesn't know this at this point, have you even listened to our podcast?
What, is it your first day?
It's been MEZ and Ryan, and we wish you the next one. Take care, and bye.
Bye.